Hey, what's up? I bet you're all wondering what in the world is happening with Akfamilyhome right now, just in case you didn't catch my update video on the subject. Long story short, graduation and moving on with my personal life, which meant that so far I have not been able to focus on large-scale core videos. Trust me, I know it's been 9 months since the last core video, I know, trust me. So in the meantime, I figured I'd try working on some smaller scale yet still interesting topics. Topics like game preservation. In terms of retro collecting, I'm probably in the middle range between don't care to use emulators and I have a box fetish. Looking around my room, you might be able to see some decently rare finds, but I've always never been a fan of dropping hundreds or thousands of dollars just to get one specific hard-to-find game, or getting a game in complete mint condition. I'm always on the lookout for specific games, but always within a more reasonable price range. I've only paid more than $50 for a US GameCube game once. Sometimes I get real lucky finds searching around local listings and stores, and that's kind of what makes game collecting a thrill for me. You get cool finds while still minimizing the budget as much as possible. Now when it comes to certain types of physical retro games like cartridges, save files are an interesting topic, as some people might want to know how you can transfer or backup save files from these cards. There are a lot of reasons why you might want to do this. Maybe you, for inexplicable reasons, played a game first on an emulator or a flash card and you want to transfer your save to a physical copy when you get one. Or the save battery in some of your older cartridges are dying and you want to back up your saves in case they become lost. Or maybe you just want to say screw it and put a fully completed save on your cartridge. Either way, I figured I'd share a little bit about how I manage save files for my current retro library, if there are even methods available to me at all. This is not a fully featured guide on how to dump any cartridge with 100% accuracy or anything, just the methods I personally use with the systems that I own. In case you're curious. The Famicom, the one that started it all in a very casual sense. For the Famicom, I use this. This is the Retro Freak, one of those multiple systems in one emulator boxes. And the emulation is, well, it's fine, but the main use of the system for me is this hunk of a cartridge adapter, which supports Famicom, SNES, Genesis, Game Boy, and even TurboGrafx games. And it's pretty straightforward to use. You just plug the cartridge in. You just plug the cartridge in, and then you can easily play the game and dump both the ROM and save file to a microSD card. Though the reliability and accuracy of this thing may not be the greatest, and there's other methods of dumping data from other systems that I'll mention later, this is still currently my only method of dumping Famicom cards. Which, to be fair, there aren't a lot of games in my collection that even support battery saves, with the only exception basically being Kirby's Adventure. Gotta keep that sweet 100% safe. Now the Famicom disk system is a fascinating subject, considering its games and, to an extent, save files all come on floppy disks. And there are indeed ways to back up these disks and even fully rewrite them with different games. The most convenient option, and what I personally use, is the FDS stick. This is a little USB dongle that you can basically put disk system ROMs into and acts as a substitute for the disk drive on actual hardware, complete with a fancy menu. Which is great considering Famicom disk drives are notorious for breaking from old age and being a pain to repair, I know from first-hand experience. But this thing also lets you connect the disk drive directly to a computer so you can fully dump and write Famicom disk files with an app. Now the latter does require a disk drive that can actually rewrite disks. Some super early models like the one I have here are able to do so right out of the box. But later models feature write protection that need to be bypassed with hardware modifications, so I'm basically counting myself lucky. With a fully working non-write protected drive, dumping disks along with their saves is a pretty easy task, and it becomes a very convenient way to repurpose old bootleg disks to run all sorts of homebrew content. When the hardware actually works. For the Super Nintendo, I used something that you might have seen on this channel just recently, the Retrode. This is a simple cartridge and controller adapter for SNES and Genesis games, and I previously used it to make the SNES mouse work on a computer. But of course, the main function of this thing is to dump cartridge files, and as I said in that video, it's very straightforward. You put a cartridge in, plug it in, and it appears as a USB drive with the ROM and save file that you can simply copy like any other computer file. However, I should mention that this base method does not support certain SNES games, such as ones like Kirby Superstar, which use the SA1 chip. Thankfully, the Retrode supports a ton of community-made adapters that expand its support to other systems. But considering they're community-made, some of them can be fairly hard to come by since they're not mass-produced. I do have this adapter, which expands my retro to support N64 games, which is what I also use to dump them. But in my experience, not all games seem to work well with it since N64 game saves come in a few different types. For example, Super Mario 64 uses EEPROM for saving, which works with the retro, but also doesn't let me rewrite a save file for Ocarina of Time, which uses SRAM. It just erased the save file I previously had. Yeah, yikes. This could possibly be something that can be fixed with updates to the firmware, but considering the niche nature of the retro and its plugins, progress is all over the place and it's a bit hard to find definitive tech support for these problems. I do hope this stuff is eventually ironed out though. Now for the Game Boy and Game Boy Color. I used to dump these cards with the Retro Freak, but recently an issue caused me to look for a different solution. The problem being that this doesn't support the Game Boy camera, and I definitely want to back up all the pixelated photos I've taken over the years. And after searching around, my solution came in the form of the N64 Transfer Pack. Yeah, so turns out a user named SaturnU worked on a homebrew tool for the N64 that lets you dump Game Boy cartridges using the Transfer Pack. And it just so happens that I have an EverDrive for the thing. By plugging any Game Boy cartridge in, which includes the Game Boy camera, and running the homebrew tool, you can easily dump its save file to the SD card on the EverDrive. The connection might be a little finicky at times, but in my experience, moving the cartridge around or pulling it out very slightly occasionally helps things. And there it is, all of my old photos preserved. A while ago, I got a hold of this amazing looking Japan-exclusive atomic purple Game Boy camera. And the album was filled with photos from its previous Japanese owner, which I definitely wanted to back up for preservation, seeing these are very likely from the 90s. And this transfer pack and EverDrive setup allowed me to do exactly that. And if that wasn't enough, with another tool that uses code from Pokemon Stadium's GB Tower mode, you can just run certain Game Boy cards on your N64 like a Super Game Boy. How cool is that? The camera doesn't actually work though. Darn your technology! Moving on to the GBA, and dumping cartridges is incredibly simple. All you need is a DS with a GBA slot and an R4 flash card. There's an app called GBA Backup Tool that lets you read and write GBA saves using the second slot, and it's quick and easy. It's been a saving grace when sometimes a fuzzy connection just wipes out my WarioWare Twisted save file for no reason. Another interesting application I've had for this is with the e-reader. It's capable of running standalone games off of physical cards, like this Game & Watch game. But some games that are larger in size save themselves into the e-reader's internal memory, which can be dumped like a normal save file, basically allowing you to transfer different saves containing data for other cards, such as this one that includes the air hockey game even though I don't own the physical card for it. I would have tried finding it, but the shipping prices are insane, like seriously, these are paper cards. And last but not least, DS and 3DS games. These are once again very straightforward to dump, provided that you have a modded 3DS. Homebrew apps like TWL Save Tool can easily handle DS cartridges, while there are save managers like Checkpoint for both 3DS game cards and downloadable games. With this, I can dump my current library of physical games and install them on the bajillion other 3DS systems I have using my original saves, without having to constantly swap game cards between them. Homebrew is the pretty big savior when it comes to that aspect. And there you have it. Hopefully this is a neat look into what I use practically to back up my game saves, and also a nice little side topic. If you have a sizable collection of physical games on cartridges, I think safe backups are definitely something to look into, seeing as physical media doesn't last forever and eventually you'll come across cases of lost save files that you wish you had backups for. I know I have. So I'll put some links to more definitive resources in the description should you want to learn more about this topic. My own knowledge is limited after all. If you're really serious about preserving not just save files but every last byte of game media as accurate as possible, there are definitely a ton of rabbit holes to dive into regarding that. As for me, I'm pretty content with the methods I use for now. I am not going to lose sleep over knowing that I don't have a way of backing up virtual boy saves.